Hello, everybody. I started reposting. I do this every year, but I started reposting. It was my 5th year anniversary of me discovering Odda and meeting Jeanette, and I repost and I make my reposts of that trip on Facebook. Well, this year I took it a step further, and I'm not only reposting on Facebook on my Facebook page. Not only am I reposting my trip to Odda, but I'm also reposting the time period from March 25th, 2018, when I returned to the United States, until May 9th, when I went back to Norway to look for buying a building. So, kind of what I'm going to do here is, and now everyone who follows me on Facebook can see this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to repost on Instagram. There's several slideshows that I made of my business kind of related slideshows that I made, and I made these to send back to Odda, to the Odda Business Garden, which the Odda Business Garden was this organization in Odda that I was directed to go to. When I was in Odda in March 2018, and when I realized that Jeanette was serious about this friendship, and I realized that I was going to have to buy a building to pursue this dream of having this relationship with Jeanette. When I knew that I was going to have to that I wanted to buy a building to pursue this, which is something I had been posting about, my intentions of having a sport tile art in Odda, which was a motto to show my intent to Jeanette, and also an ultimate dream of mine. Didn't have to happen, but I basically wanted everyone to know that this was something that I was dreaming about, that I wanted to have happen after several trips to Norway over the last 10 years, and my grandpa living there, and being basically a Norwegian, but he lived in Norway, and I grew up with that. So I knew there was some possibility of this, but it wasn't until Odda that I finally inquired about it. And after meeting Odda's business, and when I realized that this friendship was becoming a relationship with Jeanette, and I wanted this to happen, I decided that I'm here in Odda, I need to inquire about this now. And I went to the bank in Odda, and I asked, how did someone buy a building in Odda, in Norway? And the woman at the bank suggested I go over across the street to the Odda Business Garden. So I went to the Odda Business Garden and walked right in and went up and knocked on the door, basically. And a woman was working. Her name was Marie. She was really friendly. Kind of told her what I was wondering about, and she was very encouraging of this idea I had. My thoughts about my interest in this idea about buying a building in Odda. I'm an artist. I make tiles. I'd like to make. So she was very encouraging of me about that idea. But she said, "How about you come back in a day or 2 days? Let me get your email address," kind of a thing, and you can come back and we can talk about this. So at the time, it wasn't something that I had some kind of I didn't come to Norway with a plan to meet Odda's Business Garden. I didn't even know it existed, but this is something that happened. So the trip. Many questions were answered. Does Jeanette really like me? We met each other. I came through. Part of the friendship went into fast forward once we met, and once we realized that we like each other, and I'm staying in Odda and I'm not moving on. Things progressed. Part of the friendship and the relationship progressed very quickly after that. Now I'm here in Odda. It's now's the time to inquire about buying this building there. So I knew about. I had investigated residencies in Norway before. I had looked at. I had thought about buying buildings in Norway before, but I'd never seriously inquired about it because I never went any further. I knew my grandpa owned a building in Norway, so I knew it was possible, but I wasn't going from community to community in Norway trying to see what buildings might be there for me to buy. So it wasn't until Odda, where I'm presented with a reason to buy a building in Odda. So the Odda Business Garden became this place of knowledge where I learned I could buy a building in Odda as an American. But that was a major kind of confirmed understanding that was reached. Now, so again, things went fast forward once I realized that I can buy a building in Odda. So upon coming back a day or two later and meeting with the business garden in Odda, and giving a kind of rough presentation of my artwork to Marie and her Ovind, her partner in the office. She was mainly the one I was speaking to. I had these samples of art tiles with me. I had my website. She had a day or so to kind of probably take a peek at what I did. So when I sat down and we had our kind of formal meeting, she asked me the questions about what do I want, So, I could have bought a building in Odda and then just kind of gone back and there are all these different possibilities, but ultimately I wanted to make my art in Odda. How fast did that need to happen? And I could have come back to Odda in May 2000 and bought a building, and then just maybe slowly set it up and got a kiln going after a couple subsequent trips, and maybe started firing tiles and saw. But it was one of those things where I wanted to make my art in Odda, and technically, I could go to Odda right now with a certain amount of money and be making tiles in a week. That's the reality of it. I could have a building in Odda in Norway. I could buy the equipment, set it all up. If the electrical plug-in is there, I could have tiles made in 2 weeks. I could be producing tiles. This isn't magic. This isn't. But we all know that it's not going to happen that fast. So so how slow should we think about that this happens? So I guess the thought was, when I was meeting Marie at the Odda Business Garden, was how long do we want this to go? How long do I want to start the process of starting a business in Odda now? Which I had every reason to do that at that point. At the time, I wasn't asking the questions, all these different possible questions. It was a loose-ended meeting. The main thought was can I buy a building in Odda? And then it led to having a residency. I didn't ask Marie at the Business Garden, can I buy a building and buy a building just as an American and not have a residency? I didn't ask that question. Ultimately, I would want to have a little shop and sell my tiles in Odda. But it wasn't like, in giving Marie at the Business Garden this loose kind of this general idea of what I would like. She came up with options for me, basically, and it was kind of in March. It was a loose set of options, but we both knew I was serious, and we both knew I wanted to buy a building in Odda, and she talked about the residencies, but I hadn't bought the building yet, so I wasn't taking on a residency yet. We talked about. I told her I want to come back in the spring, in a short time, come back and look at buildings. Generally there was this sense I had to go back to the United States in a few days because my plane was leaving, and we had a really good meeting. She kind of sent me out and gave me a couple names of people in the community that maybe I should go and talk to who had buildings for sale, to kind of take in the history of Odda. I went and did those things, and then I was going to return to the United States, and then I would communicate with her with emails. Well, once everything kept progressing and kept being positive after my meeting with Marie at the Odda Business Garden, and I went and checked out these met these people and looked at the museum at the Norsk Museum of Hydropower and Industry, and I came back to the United States, I was ready to pursue this idea of buying a building in Odda because I was ready to pursue this relationship with Jeanette. So in that time period when I came back to the United States, some people, like I was saying, you might be thinking that, well, this is a big, some people might think this is a really big deal, doing something like this, because they don't know what it really entails. This isn't rocket science, but it does require you have to follow the rules. So we all know that takes time. So I was, of course, all about taking time, but I needed to go back in May and look at buildings, because that was the first step. And it was also my first step to show, because I'm posting all this on social media, and Jeanette's following me. So it's also my first step to show that I'm following through with my intentions. So in that time period when I'm back in the United States, I made several slideshows that I was sending to Marie at the Odda Business Garden. And these took me a lot of time to put together and show her about who I was. Now, I didn't know anything about how the UDI or how the immigration worked, other than that, you have to be allowed to do things by Odda's immigration. So I wasn't going to investigate the UDI immigration website any further when I was in the United States, because I didn't know yet what options I was going to have to pursue for this residency, and Marie was going to help me with that when I returned. When she took me under her wing and I entrusted in her, because it was a very positive meeting we had in March. So what I want to share with everybody is I have several slideshows that I've been sharing on Facebook, and I'm getting to the tail end of them. But they were the slideshows that I was making and posting on Facebook, putting on YouTube, and sending to Marie in Odda, so she could get to know who I was, and unsure of who else would be seeing this, knowing Jeanette would be seeing this, but knowing many people are following me and many people would be seeing this. So these were all steps that I was taking to show everyone how excited and how interested I am to have my business in Odda. Now, we have to always remember that it's quite possible that all I needed to do was go and buy a building in Odda, and that would have been enough to show Jeanette my intent. And I could have taken it really slow like that. But that wasn't it was like, that wasn't, I was just moving forward, ready to take on new possibilities. I wasn't thinking like, let's slow everything down and let's just buy a building. I didn't know how it was going to unfold exactly, but I knew I wanted to buy a building and make my art in it. And, and then all these other questions happen, like residencies and all these things that can be options for me. And and why not seek a residency if it's an option? And why not seek the residency if Marie at Odda Business Garden thinks that I have a product that would be granted a residency? I didn't know anything about who makes decisions on these residencies when I inquired about it. And I was going completely by Marie at the Business Garden and her advice for what I should do next. So I'm doing this live video because I want everyone to see, and I also made this into a permanent video that I'm going to post on YouTube. But I can always save this as well and just post this on YouTube. But I just want everyone to know who follows this that I'm going to be maybe one a day. I'll repost these slideshows that I made that I was sending back to Odda to Marie and posting on social media. That were my attempts to kind of show everyone how I'm interested in coming to Odda and selling my tiles there, and it had nothing to do with Taylor Swift and it had nothing to do with Jeanette. And these are things that I was sending to Marie in Odda, who I was planning on meeting again when I returned in May to look at buying a building. So. These were important little steps that I took. These were the efforts that I made that Marie had knowledge of in Odda, and who all was following me. And I just want to share those again on social media. I'm sharing them right now on Facebook. Every day on Facebook, I reshare my 5 years ago, my trip, where I was at in the progression of all this. I'm sharing it on Facebook each day. So some important parts of that I reshare on Instagram.